I hated growing up with gay parents. Right away, I want to make something clear, I'm not a homophobe. My sister is gay, many of my friends are gay. If anything, even though I'm straight, having gay parents made me more comfortable with people in the LGBTQ+ scene. It never really hit me that my family was different from most others until the 3rd grade, when the bullying started. Word spread around the class that I had 2 moms, and before I knew it I was being taunted for it on the playground. At this time, my relationship with my parents was still happy and loving, so I shrugged the remarks off. When puberty hit, though, I became increasingly aware of the hole in my life where I wanted a father. Granted, my relationship with my parents was already souring at this point for a variety of other factors. Still, I yearned for a male role model, someone to talk to about guy things. My parents had no male friends, and only ever seemed to talk about males disparagingly. I would hear that men were inherently more violent, selfish, and unhealthy, and I began to believe them. Growing up in the environment that I did, I emerged with more feminine tendencies, and a deficit of traditional masculine attitudes. It didn't help that I was homeschooled for the majority of middle school, leaving me without a basis for what most guys my age behaved or looked like. I didn't have any contact with male relatives either, my parents both cut off their families from my life. I returned to public schooling for high school, but found myself intimidated by most of my straight male peers. I eventually learned to talk like them and dress like them, but I never learned to be truly comfortable around them. To be fair, my parents were extremists, and I acknowledge that. They refused to allow my younger sister to attend sleepovers when her friends merely had fathers present, under the pretense that they might assault or even rope her. To this day, I'm still unclear where their anti-male sentiment emerged from, but they never seemed to acknowledge the effect that it might have on me, a male. At around the age of 12, I began to understand more about the implications of my conception. My mother carried me through artificial insemination from an anonymous sperm donor. Being without a named father has put me into something of a perpetual existential crisis. I feel as though I was not even conceived out of love, I was conceived because my parents could afford to buy the necessary ingredient, some random guy's semen. I will never know half of my biology, half of where I come from and why I exist. I feel robbed of an experience afforded to nearly everyone else in the world. The worst part is, I feel utterly alone in this state of being. Orphans and adoptees are entitled to want to know their biological parents, and they receive support for that desire. Children who have deceased or vacant fathers at least have their mother's memory to go off of, pictures, stories, a name, even. I will always have nothing, and never felt supported for wanting more. Whenever I would bring up these feelings to my parents, they would be dismissed as pointless and ungrateful. I was told I was simply lucky to be born. Over the years, I've tried to make peace with this fact. I've managed to connect with some of my half-siblings on my father's side online, spread across the United States. They don't have any clue who our biological father is either, but they all grew up with fathers in their homes. I don't think I'll ever be at peace knowing my biological dad might be out there somewhere, and my mom doesn't even know what his face looks like. I feel completely alone in this sadness. I spent my teenage years envious of my friends with fathers, wishing that I'd been born into their family instead. As conceited as I know this sounds, I never felt validated as a straight male growing up. My parents wanted a daughter instead, and they got one a few years after me. I felt guilty and wrong for being a boy because there was no one in my family like me, and I was told time and time again that men were the devil. Once I became aware of it, Father's Day was one of the worst days of the year. I'm not trying to say that gay people shouldn't be parents. I'm only saying that they should be conscious of the impact that it will inevitably have on their children, and that they should try to provide them with role models for their gender. However, I am against anonymous sperm banks. All of those anonymous donors are leaving their offspring to be with a question that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. My husband is cheating on me with my best friend. My husband and I have been dating since I was 19 and he was 22. We've been married for 6 years now. We have 2 kids and I'm 6 months pregnant with our third. 2 years ago I found out my dad has stage 3 colon cancer. My dad is my only parent as my mom passed away when I was 12. He's my favorite human and life without him doesn't seem as colorful. His laugh is contagious and he gives these big bear hugs that seem to make all of your broken pieces feel like they're perfectly in place again. Whenever I've had a hard day he doesn't poke and prod and just lets me vent and listens. About 5 months ago we discovered the treatments aren't working for him and in direct quote from the doctor he said months not years. Since then he's gotten progressively worse and now is losing memory. He looked at the dog he got for me on my 21st birthday and said, "Wow, that's a nice dog. Where'd you get it?" My husband has been my absolute rock. He has been there for me holding my hand and helping me through this. He's been so loving and attentive to both my kids and I don't get me wrong, I am a mother first always. I don't allow myself to wallow. My kids are still loved, cared for, played with, and I haven't let my load slack around the house. Once my dad got his updated prognosis my husband encouraged me to quit my job. About a month later we discovered we were pregnant again and I still hadn't let go of my job, I kept holding out for some reason. After finding out I was pregnant again he assured me it was still okay to quit my job, that honestly it would save us a small fortune on daycare costs anyways. So I did, I quit my job. My best friend and I have been friends since diapers. Her family is like my family and vice versa. My mom and her mom grew up together. We've always been solid and right after my dad's appointment when we found out he had so little time left I drove straight to her house and she held me while I cried for hours. If there are soulmates in friend form, she was mine. Thick as thieves is what my mom used to say. This morning as I was up with my 3-year-old, he's sick, my husband's work alarm was going off. He has a few he sets so I turned that one off and gently woke him up. He said he was up late working so he took the morning off. Rolled over and went back to sleep. As I went to turn off the remainder of his alarms I saw a text from my friend on his lock screen that said, "I'm assuming since there hasn't been an angry pregnant lady on my doorstep you haven't told her about us yet?" Time froze at that moment. I took his phone and walked away and just read their conversations. 4 months this man has been fucking my best friend. 4 months these people have been lying to my face. And I know what you're going to say, you should have seen the warning signs. But I've been clutching this phone in my hand for 2 hours and nothing. He has been so loving and attentive to me, but he always has been. So kind and gentle. There have been no late night work nights except for once in a blue moon, there has been no lingering touches between them or even glances. They act as they have since the day I first introduced them. How sick is it that she calls him her brother but she screws him? I know so many people get a moment of clarity in situations like this but I have none. Aside from being sad about my dad, I haven't changed. I'm still a loving wife and mother. I still doted on him and my children. I talk to him about how he is doing and how his day was every freaking day. I haven't allowed the ground to swallow me whole. I know what I have to do now, but I just don't want to. I'm about to lose my family and my support system in one blow. I'll confront him tomorrow. Today I just need this last 24 hours of peace. As for her, I won't give her the satisfaction of a response. I don't care why she did it. She did it and it's done. I was always the friend who cleaned up her messes. After today I will cut her out of my life like she never mattered at all. This has to be the hardest storm I'll ever weather, but damn it I know it'll sail through it. If not for me, for my children. I am divorcing my husband because of his Reddit account and a bag of chips. Obviously it goes without saying it wasn't just the bag of chips but hot Cheetos were my breaking point. I couldn't take it anymore. I had already had the terms of separation drawn up 6 months ago when during a heated argument he said we don't have kids, you should be thankful it's only me you clean up after. I kept hearing it in my head. I should be thankful for cleaning up behind a grown man 10 years older than me? He apologized the next day in detail and told me why what he said was wrong and that he doesn't believe it. But maybe it's just out of my character, but I don't think the things you say in those moments are just hurtful words. Little bit of truth in them. And then I found his Reddit account a few days ago. I accidentally saw the username when he showed me a screenshot. I tried not to memorize it, and it took me 2 days to get the courage to look. In between the comments on NSFW subreddits were complaints about me, and posts about me too. One post he'd be ripped to shreds and told he was a piece of crap. Reading those comments made me realize I was nothing but a fucking idiot to think love can fix things. I was 20 when I met him and he was 35. I thought people were being dramatic or annoying about our age gap because my single father who raised me didn't have an issue. But then I realized he was just the same type of fucking creep. It was almost like my father pre-groomed me to accept certain behavior to make it easier for the other men in my life. I'm getting off topic but I came home early today after a rough day at work and finding out my direct reporting manager had been murdered by her husband. Then I walked in the door to see my lazy, filthy one. I told him what happened to her. I started to cry. He did not console me. He said we don't know what made him do that, let's wish both of them luck and move on with our day. Wish her luck? The fucking dead lady? I tried to convince myself he just didn't pay attention. That soothed me for about an hour. Until I was in the middle of making dinner and he complained that it was already 6:45 p.m. I told him he shouldn't be that hungry yet, he just ate half a bag of chips and left them on the table. So instead of A, helping me finish dinner, B, apologizing and waiting silently and patiently, C, finishing the bag of chips, or D, just laughing it off, he threw the bag of chips at me. 7 years together, 4 married. And he's never done anything that downright rude, because low self-esteem aside that's something that won't fly with me either way. The chips landed all over the floor I had just mopped and swept. Whatever glare I gave him, it was enough to make him grab the broom in 30 seconds. It wasn't enough to make him at least check that it was all swept up and vacuum after. So when I finished dinner and brought our plates to the dinner table, thinking wow, I really spoil him, the entire time we've dated, I've always made his plates and brought them right to him. No one has ever done that for me. And I stepped on a chip. It didn't hurt or anything, but I screamed. Not sure why. I just couldn't take it anymore. So, I ran to the home office and came back out with the papers and pen. Put them in front of his dinner plate and walked out while he was yelling my name. I'm killing a burger and fries in my car right now and realizing I have to start all over. My life is done. My love for him is too. I hope I don't cave. I hope I don't let him convince me. I hope if I start to change my mind I come back and read this post so that I understand this is not a heated decision, this is something I need to do if I ever want anything like a real fucking life. My ex started abusing me again. I ruined her college education. I met my ex-girlfriend Renee 4 years ago when we were 17 and 16. We were off and on because of her behavior and mine as well. It was toxic and we weren't best suited. I was untrusting and cold some days. She was always drinking and going out with other people and couldn't be bothered with me unless she had a bad day. She constantly went out drinking, sending explicit pics to other guys. Having sex and then blaming it on assault so I wouldn't freak out. And I handled it poorly by being strict and creating rules and being way too overprotective of her. Which I can admit is my bad. But she always made me the source of her issues and blamed me for her parents hating her. Her sister is mean to her. Not having a social life. Even though I stopped her from sewer slide when I met her, helped her finish high school, and helped her get a scholarship to my local university. We finally broke up when she moved here for college from a few states away almost 2 years ago. When she at 19 started dating a minor behind my back. I went on with my life and she went on with hers. I met somebody and we had a perfectly healthy relationship and she brought out the best in me and made me become a better person until a month ago when I lost her to complications in her life and she had to leave. I grieved as I needed and continued trying to do better like she always wanted for me. Flash forward a week ago when Renee and I ran into each other and started talking again, told her how my life was going, she talked about hers. And we started being friends again. She knew I was grieving and at first was incredibly sympathetic and I figured we could have a good friendship. After a day she started comparing me to her new boyfriend and making fun of me for things I lacked and would rub in my face how better he is at everything compared to me. The shoe dropped when she started rubbing in my face about having sex with him and how it must suck knowing I can't again with my ex. I'm fine with being insulted, but bringing her up knowing my pain pushed a line. I told her to knock it off and don't talk about it, and she proceeded to treat me like a client at her job. She helps mentally disabled people and knows I have a slight disability, and kept telling me that if I don't want to be talked to like that then stop telling her what to do. She gets drunk one night and starts yelling at me about our relationship and all the issues she endured for being with me. I apologized and made my amends because I can agree I wasn't always the best. Never expected her to apologize for hers, but made clear how sorry I was for my part, as I know I wasn't always correct, and she finally went to bed. Next night she calls me at 1 a.m. She gets incredibly drunk. Starts calling me names and saying I'm mean because she's bringing up sex with her boyfriend and how she's doing it while texting me, and I get sick of it and tell her to go away. She makes comments like she's gonna keep screwing him, to where I make a comment of that's nice, now if only he could satisfy, which brought her boyfriend into a rage and threatening to shoot me. And then Renee pipes up and says she should go find my ex and tell her how horrible I used to be and ruin everything, so if the day comes where she can come back, she will never want to see me again. Cue my nuclear revenge. They both were college students living in the dorm on scholarships. The college has a rule against alcohol and you will lose your scholarship if caught with it. So I contacted the police, gave them her dorm number, explained she's underage drinking, her boyfriend is supplying the alcohol, and she's currently having sex in the dorm with him. Police show up, dorm roommates let them in, knock on the door, catch her drunk with all sorts of alcohol from over state lines. My state has a lesser alcohol rating, so stuff from the next state over is double in alcohol percentage, and catch them both obviously having sex while she's drunk. She ends up charged with underage drinking. He's charged with giving alcohol to a minor and is looking at added sensual assault charges because he got her drunk and then screwed her while she's under the legal age. And both of their scholarships were lost and were expelled, and now both have to leave town and they both live in entirely different states. She wants to make me feel lesser? Enjoy losing your education. I found out why my husband hides his best friend from me. The truth devastated me. I have been married to my husband Dylan for 3 years. We got together when we were 17, but we've known each other since the 4th grade. I love my husband, he's the total package. Funny, sweet, smart, and attractive. He's made my life amazing, and he's who I fully intended on spending the rest of my life with. We attended all the same schools from the time we met, up until college. In that time we've both made our own friend groups. He's been more connected with his friends than I have, and because of that I've become a part of the group as well, I'd like to think. In that time, I've been at around 50% of their group hangouts, mostly because of my job, but sometimes I'm just straight up not invited. I didn't question any of this because hey, they're his friends, he doesn't see them nearly as often as he sees me, it's not my business. My husband met his best friend, Caro, long before he met me. I knew almost nothing about Caro up until recently. He wasn't at our wedding, nor did he attend any of the same schools as us, and I was under the impression he wasn't friends with anyone in our group. I thought all of this was because of his line of work, as I was told he traveled a lot. Last year me and my husband went to a barbecue hosted by another couple in the group. Caro was there. I didn't recognize him at first, but when I realized who he was, I was honestly kind of shocked. I'd seen him in person before, but he always kept a very good distance from me, which I'm realizing now was intentional. Anyways, he's totally stunning, he looks like he could be a supermodel. When I attempted to make conversation with him, he seemed really nervous and totally shut me down after a few sentences. When I mentioned this behavior to anyone else, they also shut me down, saying things like that's just how he is, or maybe you said something that offended him. In short, no one would tell me anything about Caro, at all. Any conversation that involved him was a no-go. At the end of that night, I tried talking to Dylan about his behavior. He told me Caro didn't like me. I was confused, because I'd hardly seen him in person at all, let alone actually talk to him. The excuse my husband gave was that he disliked me because I cheated on my husband once in college, and Caro was too stubborn to let it go. I've seen Caro less than a dozen times since then, mostly at birthday parties, huge get-togethers, and on one occasion he came to our house to watch a football game with my husband and a few of their other buddies. Anyways, a few weeks ago my husband went fishing with his cousin. That same night, I had some of the girls in our friend group over for a girls' night type thing. My friend Lily was scrolling through some social media. I was glancing over her shoulder when I saw a selfie of Dylan and Caro sitting next to each other in a hot tub. The selfie had been posted maybe 30 minutes ago. I asked Lily about what I had seen, and she went pale. She tried saying nothing, but I snatched the phone from her and went to the profile that posted the photo. The profile belonged to my husband. It was a private profile, and scrolling through the photos, most of them were dirty jokes or memes, but the rest of them were photos of him and Caro. Either they were hanging out alone, or with the rest of the group, minus me. Most of the photos seemed way too close, too touchy, or doing things that seemed too personal or intimate for friends to be doing. I spent a good 10 minutes looking before I couldn't take it anymore. I was horrified. All of the photos were dated to nights my husband told me he was working late, hanging out with this relative or that, times that he told me he was doing something else, and obviously hangouts I wasn't invited to. Lily just sat there looking dumb. She didn't say anything, but all the girls were looking at us like a bomb had just gone off. They clearly knew what I had seen, and their reactions were enough to confirm exactly what I was afraid of. I was livid. I started yelling, Lily was crying, and the rest of the girls were freaking out. When I started to calm down and demanded that they explain what was going on, Lily told me everything. Dylan and Caro had been sleeping together, and very essentially dating behind my back since before we even got married. They got together during a 1-month break me and Dylan had during college, and they stuck together ever since. They all knew, and none of them told me until I found out the hard way. Caro wasn't at our wedding because he felt guilty. He avoided me like the fucking plague because he felt guilty. They arranged group meetups in a group chat I wasn't in, because they all liked Caro enough to spare his feelings. Even the guys in the group felt the same way about him, apparently. Caro was never as distant as I thought he was just being hidden. Dylan was hiding him from me because he didn't want me to find out they were together. By the end of it, half of us were sobbing, and everyone who wasn't was apologizing to me. I was so angry. I made them swear they wouldn't say anything to Dylan, or anyone else. I kicked them all out, and cried myself to sleep. I was basically in denial, like it was some kind of sick fucking prank. My husband didn't come home until the next morning. He told me all about the supposed fishing trip he'd gone on. I didn't say anything about what I knew. I guess he could tell something was up, because he kept asking me what was wrong, all day, every 5 fucking minutes. Eventually I just told him I'd been in an argument with my sister. By the end of the week, I was totally numb. Last night while my husband was handing out candy to kids, I saw a notification pop up on his phone. Since I knew his password, I opened it. It was a text from Caro. I looked through the conversations they'd had. It confirmed everything. It was devastating. Dylan texted Caro the exact same way he texted me. He told Caro he loved him. Every sweet thing he said to me had been said in his conversations with Caro. I was hardly mentioned. I put his phone back before he noticed. Dylan is at work now. I don't know what to do. I could never imagine myself leaving Dylan, because he's such a loving partner and a good man. But I can't see myself winning in a competition against Caro if that's what it comes down to. I can't even make myself be disgusted or angered by Dylan. I love him too much. I'm not even upset with Caro. But I'm so hurt. I don't want to risk losing my husband, and I don't want to share with him. I called Lily and my sister this morning and told them about what I had found. They both asked what I'm going to do, and I had nothing to say. I don't know what to do, at all. People who won the lottery, how did it ruin your life? Around 10 years ago, I won this massive lottery, and oh boy, did my life flip upside down. At first, I was beyond ecstatic, like fireworks going off in my heart. Winning that money felt like the ultimate answer to all my prayers, the golden ticket to a worry-free life. I couldn't believe my luck. With the weight of debts lifted off my shoulders, I decided to share my newfound wealth with the people I loved most, my family and closest friends. I wanted to see their faces light up like a Christmas tree, and they did. Their smiles were like warm hugs, and I felt like I was floating on a cloud of happiness. I was convinced that this windfall was a blessing from the stars above. But, soon enough, I found myself in the middle of a whirlwind. It seemed like everyone I'd ever known suddenly showed up, wanting to be my new BFF. At first, it was pretty cool. I mean, who doesn't like a little attention, right? But then, I started sensing something was off. These folks weren't really interested in me, they only cared about the money. It got harder and harder to trust people. I mean, were they here for me or for my bank account? I felt like I had to put up walls to protect myself. It was like a real-life maze, and I didn't know who to let in and who to keep out. And you know what else happened? My brain got all weird. Winning all that money messed with my head. Suddenly, I wanted stuff I'd never even thought about before. Fancy cars, huge houses, designer clothes, you name it. I thought all these material things would make me happy. I mean, it works for celebrities, right? But guess what? It didn't make me happy. It only made me feel empty inside, like I was trying to fill a hole that was just getting bigger and bigger. It was like chasing rainbows that kept moving away, and I couldn't catch them. I didn't even recognize myself anymore. And things got messy with my family too. Some of them were thrilled for me, and we celebrated together like one big party. But others, oh boy, they got jealous and mad. Money has a way of changing people, and it changed us too. It felt like my family was being torn apart, and I was stuck in the middle, not knowing how to fix things. And then there were the financial advisors and all those smart people telling me what to do with my money. It was overwhelming. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of advice, trying to stay afloat. I was so afraid of losing everything, and the stress was eating me alive. Oh, and let's not forget the media circus that followed me everywhere I went. It was like I was starring in my very own reality show, and I didn't sign up for this. My privacy disappeared, and I felt like a caged animal at the zoo. I just wanted to scream, leave me alone. All this madness took a toll on my health too. I started partying way too much, trying to escape from the chaos. But all the fun was just a facade, and deep down, I felt broken and lost. I was like a puppet, dancing to the tune of my wealth, but there was no joy in my heart. One day, as I looked at myself in the mirror, I realized that money wasn't the answer to my happiness. It wasn't the key to a fulfilling life. I missed the simple things I had before, the little moments of joy with my loved ones, the laughter, and the genuine connections. I knew I had to make a change. I wanted to fix the broken pieces of my life, to mend the bonds that were fraying. Money couldn't buy me true happiness, but maybe it could be used for something more meaningful. So, I set out on a new journey. I wanted to rediscover the things that truly mattered to me, the values I held dear before money entered the picture. I sought to rebuild the bridges with my family and friends, to heal the wounds that the fortune had caused. And you know what? It wasn't easy, but step by step, I started to find my way back to myself. I learned to cherish the simple joys of life, a warm hug, a shared meal, a heartfelt conversation. Those little things brought more happiness than any mansion or sports car ever could. I also decided to use some of my money to support causes that mattered to me, to give back to the community, to make a difference in the world. It was like a healing balm for my soul, knowing that my wealth could have a positive impact beyond my own life. In the end, I realized that money is just a tool. It can't buy happiness, and it can't fill the void inside us. The real treasure lies in the intangible moments, in the love we share with others, and in the connections that make us feel alive. So, here's my story, a rollercoaster ride of emotions, a tale of how fortune shook my world and how I learned to find the true riches of life. Money may have won the lottery, but I found my way back to happiness through the simplicity of the heart.